I was in my kitchen, feeling the weight of my belly, when Mom walked in and said, "We need to change plans." I froze, the dish towel clenched in my fist. She was supposed to stay with me through my delivery. I'd counted on her. But she just looked at my stomach, then at her phone, and said, "I have to help your brother with his kid. You'll be fine, Janine." My voice shook. "What do you mean? My due date is in 6 days." Her answer made me feel sick. Why not just schedule a C-section so I can leave sooner? Time seemed to slow. My toddler tugged at my leg, whining for a snack, and all I could think was, "She's serious." A wave of anger rose in my chest, but I swallowed it. I tried to remain calm, but my heart pounded. Everything we'd planned for months was being tossed aside. My husband was at work. My mother was my anchor. Now she was drifting away and taking my sense of security with her. I looked at her, searching for empathy, but her eyes were fixed on her phone. That's when it hit me. She was dead serious, and there was no backing out. I followed Mom into the living room, hoping to make her see reason. I tried to keep my tone steady. "Mom, we agreed you'd be here. I need you in the hospital. We talked about this." She just shrugged. "Your brother has no one to watch his kid. Your niece can't fend for herself, Janine." I felt cornered, like the walls were closing in. This was the plan she and I had talked about for months, her being my support person, holding my hand. Now she was casually tossing it aside. My baby kicked, almost like he sensed my stress. "Please, can you at least wait until the baby's born?" I asked. My voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. She shook her head like I was being dramatic. "Sorry," she said, "it's your brother's only option." Her words landed like a punch. I wasn't even an option, apparently. I tried to speak again, but she was done. She picked up her purse and said, "I'll text you tomorrow." The door closed behind her. I stood there, trembling. My eyes burned with tears. There was no way out. She'd chosen her side, and I was on my own. My husband, Ethan, came home that night to find me pacing in the kitchen, tears streaking my face. He pressed his hands on my shoulders, worry in his eyes. "What happened?" I told him everything. He went silent, then grabbed his phone, furious. He dialed my brother. I could hear the edge in Ethan's voice. "Look, man, we have an agreement with Mom. Janine's about to give birth any day. You need to figure out childcare another way." I leaned in, hands shaking. Then I heard my brother's voice, muffled but smug. Ethan's eyes hardened. He repeated what my brother said. He says, "What's the big deal? It's just a C-section." Just a C-section. Like I was scheduling a dental cleaning. My mind reeled. Was my brother really so clueless? Did he not remember how dangerous surgery could be? How vulnerable I'd be in the hospital? Ethan shot back. "Do you understand what you're saying? She needs support." Silence on the line. My brother gave a curt response. "Get over it." Then he hung up. I felt the world tilt under me. Neither Mom nor my brother cared about my pain. In their eyes, I was just supposed to handle it. The next morning, we called the hospital. We scheduled an early C-section. My obstetrician sounded concerned, asking why the rush, but I choked up. I couldn't even explain that my own mother was abandoning me. That night, I sat on the bathroom floor, tears soaking into a towel. My toddler knocked on the door, calling, "Mommy?" My huge belly felt heavier than ever. I rubbed it and tried to steady my breathing. My husband hovered outside, wanting to help but equally devastated. We'd prepared for natural labor. I'd imagined letting the baby choose his moment. Now I was signing forms to force him out early, all because Mom said so. Anger and sorrow twisted together in my chest. I stared at my reflection, pale and exhausted. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I thought of the day we confirmed my pregnancy, the joy, the planning, the excitement. Now everything felt rushed, cold, and unfair. "Babe, you okay?" Ethan's voice was soft through the door. I pulled myself up, tried to gather my nerves. "I'm coming out," I whispered. I wiped my face. Our little family was all we had, and we'd have to get through this alone. The surgery came and went. I remember the coldness of the operating room, the bright lights, the numbness as they lifted my new son from me. There was no time for the gentle breathing, no mother-daughter moment I'd pictured, just a sterile efficiency. 2 days later, they discharged me. My incision throbbed with every step, but the hospital needed the bed. We packed up the baby and our toddler, loaded into the car, and drove home through a blur of exhaustion. Day and night blurred together. My husband tried to care for me, plus a newborn, plus our toddler. He barely slept. I struggled just to stand. We had no help. No mother cooking soup or rocking the baby so I could rest. Just the hum of our washing machine and the faint whimpers of a tiny newborn. My phone sat silent on the counter. No calls from Mom, no texts from my brother. I told myself I shouldn't be surprised, but it still hurt like an open wound. I cried quietly, nursing the baby, my incision burning. I held on to one thought. We'd survive. But the isolation was crushing. No one seemed to care that I was alone, healing, and desperately overwhelmed. One afternoon, I decided to turn on my phone notifications again. My heart pounded when I saw the family group chat lighting up. Maybe someone finally remembered me. Maybe they were asking how I was, how the baby was doing. Instead, I saw photos. Mom with my brother's 4-year-old at some playground, laughing, arms raised on the monkey bars. My eyes widened. It looked so simple, so happy. The caption read, "Fun day out with my grandson." I felt a jolt of fury. I could barely stand upright without wincing, and there Mom was, having a carefree day. Another picture showed them at an ice cream shop. I could almost taste the sweet betrayal. With shaking fingers, I typed a reply, "Glad you're enjoying yourselves." But I stopped. Something inside me said it wasn't worth the fight. I deleted the message. Then, quietly, I turned off the notifications. I set my phone face down on the table, pressing it like it might spring to life and attack. My newborn squirmed in my arms and I kissed his soft head. I didn't want to cry again, but my heart felt raw, like they'd stolen what should have been precious moments for me and replaced them with their own. A few days later, we finally had a video call with Mom. It was the first time I'd spoken to her since the birth. I tried to stay calm, but seeing her face lit a fire in me. She was smiling at first. Then I asked, "Why did you choose him over me?" Her face froze. She shifted uncomfortably. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "Your brother needed help. You're strong, Janine. I knew you'd figure it out." Those words cut deeper than my incision. I stared at her, searching for any sign of remorse. She gave me none. "You're strong. You always have been," she repeated, like it was some kind of compliment. But it felt like dismissal, telling me I didn't need support or love. I swallowed the lump in my throat and turned the phone so she could see the baby. My voice shook. "At least say hi to your grandson." She waved awkwardly. Her eyes flicked away, as if she was eager to end the call. Something shifted in me. I felt this rush of anger, heartbreak, and an odd sense of freedom. I hung up, tears in my eyes. That was it. I realized I couldn't rely on her anymore. After that call, a strange calm settled over me. I still cried some nights, but each tear felt like a step away from them. Mom, my brother, their dismissive attitudes. My incision healed slowly, and my newborn was thriving. My toddler learned to adjust to a new sibling. Meanwhile, Ethan stood by me, exhausted but determined. I decided I wouldn't just recover physically. I'd heal my heart too. I started reading self-help blogs, focusing on boundaries and self-respect. Late at night, rocking the baby, I'd scroll through advice forums, vowing to protect my children from the same neglect I'd felt. Weeks passed, then months. My maternity leave ended, and I returned to my job remotely. The schedule was chaos, nursing between client calls, rocking a stroller with one hand while responding to emails. But with every late-night meeting or success at work, I felt a spark. My boss noticed my dedication. I handled tough negotiations like never before, fueled by this quiet, simmering anger. Over time, that anger turned into determination. I realized I wanted more than just to survive. I wanted to succeed. That became my focus. I'd pour energy into my career and my family, let them see exactly what I could do without them. 2 full years flew by in a blur of baby steps, birthdays, and big career moves. I'd gone from a tired, underappreciated employee to the company's new head of talent acquisition. The title felt surreal when I first got it, but I knew I'd earned it through long hours and unwavering resolve. By now, my youngest was toddling around the living room, knocking over blocks, while my oldest played with crayons at the kitchen table. Life had settled into a routine, busy but fulfilling. Mom and my brother barely crossed my mind, except for the occasional text from Mom. "How are the kids?" Usually short, impersonal. Then, at a virtual team meeting, I learned our company was planning a major expansion. We needed new executives in the C-suite, and I'd be part of the hiring committee. My mind buzzed with possibilities. This was my chance to make a real mark on the company. After that meeting, I stared at my reflection in the computer screen. I remembered how alone I felt after giving birth, how I promised never to go back to that helpless place. I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." I had no idea how much my family drama would collide with my professional life soon. One weekend, I got a call from Mom. Usually, she'd text, but this time, her voice sounded guarded. She mentioned my brother's freelance consulting business. "He's been going through a slow spell," she admitted. "Might have to shut down soon." I didn't reply, I just listened while simultaneously folding laundry. She kept talking, half complaining about his situation, half fishing for sympathy. I knew my brother was the golden boy in her eyes. She believed he could do no wrong. But now I heard cracks in her voice, like even she was worried. After the call ended, I sat down with my phone, scrolling through social media. Sure enough, his LinkedIn said, "Open to work." Consistent posts trying to sell his consulting services. No direct pleas for help, but it was obvious. He was desperate. Part of me felt a pang of pity. He had a child, after all. But the memory of his smug voice during my pregnancy kept intruding. "It's just a C-section," he'd said. My chest tightened, remembering the tears and fear. I closed the app, forcing myself to stay calm. If he needed a lifeline, I wasn't sure I was the one to offer it. It didn't take long for Mom to call me again. This time, she casually asked about my company's job postings. I could almost hear her forced cheer through the phone. "I happened to see an opening for a high-level position. Looks like something your brother could do." I stiffened. "Right," I said flatly, remembering the big expansion. Mom started rattling off buzzwords she'd read, trying to sound professional. It came off desperate. I suspected she just wanted her son secured in a cushy role. Less than 24 hours later, my phone rang again. This time, it was my brother. I debated not answering but picked up anyway. He was surprisingly pleasant at first, asking about the kids. Then, he dove into the real reason. "So, there's this executive role at your company. Perfect for me." I kept my voice neutral. "We're hiring, yes. You'd need to apply through the standard process." He laughed it off. "Yeah, but come on, you're in charge of hiring, right? I'll just skip the line." My stomach churned. My heart beat faster. Memories of betrayal swirling. He had some nerve. I replied quietly, "Everybody goes through the process. No exceptions." The line went silent. I knew tension was brewing, and he clearly wasn't ready for it. The next day, he called again. This time, he sounded cockier. He cut straight to the chase. "Let's set up my start date. I'll need a few weeks to move stuff around." My blood felt hot. He hadn't even submitted a resume. He hadn't interviewed. He was acting like the position was his birthright. I tried to keep my tone steady. "Nothing's decided. You have to apply, just like everyone else." Silence. Then a dismissive chuckle. Sure, but once I put your name on my application, I'm sure HR will speed it up. You know how these things work. It's basically a done deal." I bit my lip. I remembered him brushing off my pleas when I was pregnant. I remembered that feeling of helplessness, and I felt a surge of determination. "I'm not handing you this job," I said calmly. He scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic. You're my sister. Why wouldn't you help me out?" I took a deep breath. "I am helping by telling you to apply properly." He started to argue, but I ended the call. My heart pounded. I had a feeling this was just the start of his entitlement, and I was preparing myself for the storm. I tried to shake off the call, but my brother wasn't done. He texted me all day, bragging about his credentials. "They'll be lucky to have me," he wrote in one message. "With your reference, I'm unstoppable," in another. I ignored most of them. My phone buzzed constantly while I tried to balance kids, errands, and work responsibilities. By dinner time, I had dozens of notifications. Ethan glanced at my phone. "How can he be so sure of himself?" he asked, baffled. "He's done freelance consulting for years, but does he even have the background for an executive role at your company?" I shrugged. "He thinks using my name is enough. He's convinced I owe him something." We sat at the table, picking at our food. My oldest giggled while the toddler made a mess, oblivious to our tension. I flashed back to those pregnancy days, how my brother refused to budge on babysitting so Mom could stay with me. Now he wanted me to open a door for him. "He's in denial," I said quietly. Ethan nodded, and he's in for a shock. We cleaned up dinner, the house quieting as the kids slept. Deep down, I knew the next few weeks would test all my boundaries. Within days, my brother went all in on this fantasy. I saw him listing his office furniture online. A fancy desk, ergonomic chair, even some high-end microphones. He posted them on Facebook Marketplace with captions like, "Making space for bigger opportunities." Friends commented, "Congrats on the new job." He replied with excited emojis. It was like a show for everyone to see how successful he was about to become. Meanwhile, he still hadn't completed the official application. He was acting like an offer was in the bag. I scrolled through his social media, seeing photos of boxes and a half-empty office. In a story he wrote, "Big moves coming soon. Faith equals blessings." My stomach knotted. Part of me felt sorry for him. He was so convinced this was a done deal. At work, I watched the application portal. The minute he applied, HR flagged it. "We see this as your brother," they wrote. "We'll process it like normal, but just wanted a heads up." I thanked them and tried to keep my face neutral in meetings. Inside, I felt a looming dread. He was setting himself up for disappointment. And with the way things looked, that disappointment could be explosive. The first round of interviews arrived. Our HR department set up group panels to gauge initial fit. I deliberately stepped back, letting the standard process handle him. I was in a separate meeting when my phone lit up with a Slack message from a colleague. "FYI, your brother came in. He dropped your name a lot." My chest clenched. I typed back, "How did it go?" My colleague replied with a cringe emoji and wrote, "He wasn't great. Bragged too much, didn't show real knowledge. Also tried to skip questions." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling. My mind flashed to that moment when I needed him and Mom. How quickly they dismissed me. Now he needed me. The difference was that I refused to abandon professional standards. I wouldn't degrade my team's integrity. When I got home that night, Ethan noticed my tense shoulders. "How did the interview go?" I shook my head. He was awful, apparently. We shared a knowing look. My brother's overconfidence was about to clash with reality. I thought about texting him some gentle advice, but then I remembered his dismissive attitude toward my pregnancy. Let him see how it feels to face a wall of cold procedure with no special treatment. The next morning, I got a call from HR. They sounded uneasy. "Your brother tried bypassing our process," they said. "He kept telling us to skip the formalities because he's related to you." I felt the sting of second-hand embarrassment. My brother had literally demanded shortcuts. The HR rep continued. He said, "Look, I'm basically hired, so let's not waste time." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "I'm so sorry," I said. "Please treat him like any other candidate. Don't give him any special favors." I could almost hear their relief. They probably worried I'd want them to bend rules for family, but that was never who I was. After I hung up, I stewed in silence. He was pushing boundaries, embarrassing me professionally. But the old anger from the day of my forced C-section flared up. This was exactly why I couldn't trust him. He always put himself first, stepping on others' effort and time as if it didn't matter. That night, I replayed the HR call in my head. My own mother had expected me to sacrifice my childbirth plans for him, and now he thought I'd sacrifice my reputation. I swore to myself I wouldn't let him do that. Later that week, HR approached me again, hesitant. They said, "We're moving your brother to the next round, mostly out of respect for you, but he's not meeting our standards. Are you comfortable with this?" I felt annoyance bubbling. "Respect for me?" I echoed. "I'd respect you more if you followed the rules. If he's truly unqualified, cut him." They explained they were worried about offending me or causing drama. They wanted to be polite. I understood their dilemma, but refused to let them compromise. If it's obvious he isn't a fit, don't waste a slot for a better candidate. I don't want special treatment for him. I have no problem being honest. They took my words seriously, but it was already too late. He'd advanced to the final round. They had approved the shortlist, thinking they'd please me. I stood firm. After the final round, if he's still not a fit, we move on. Agreed? They nodded. Inside, I fought a swirl of emotions, frustration at HR, embarrassment at my brother, and a subtle satisfaction. He was about to learn that not everything falls into place just because he demands it. And I was done sheltering him. Sure enough, a day later, my brother texted me a screenshot of his final interview invite. "See?" he wrote. "I told you this was basically mine. They wouldn't bother if I wasn't a perfect fit." I stared at the message. a tightness growing in my chest. Perfect fit? He'd barely scraped by the initial round. Yet here he was, boasting like he was the star candidate. Then another text followed. Do I even need to show up? Or should I just report to HR on Monday? My jaw clenched. He was so certain. Despite every warning sign, he believed everything would be handed to him. Part of me wanted to correct him, to give him a reality check. But then I remembered how he'd minimized my childbirth, how my incision scar still throbbed when I twisted the wrong way. So I left him on read. No response. Let him sit in his overconfidence. Let him see what happens at the final interview. I placed my phone aside and went to tuck my kids into bed. The house was calm and warm. I was building a life on my own terms, far from the chaos of my old family dynamic. The day of the final interview arrived. I dressed in my usual work attire, feeling a strange knot in my stomach. When I arrived at the conference room, my brother was already there, leaning back in a chair like he owned the place. He grinned at me. Sis, ready for this? I nodded curtly. Yes, we have a full panel. I led him inside. There were 5 people on the panel. 2 VPs, 2 directors, and me. I introduced everyone formally. He looked smug, likely assuming this was all a formality. We started with standard questions about leadership style, previous results, and client management. He stumbled almost immediately. He tried to name-drop big companies, but we pressed for specifics. He rambled, eyes darting to me, hoping I'd bail him out. I didn't. I kept my expression neutral, jotting down notes like I would with any candidate. As the interview continued, sweat beaded on his forehead. He tried to sound confident, but his answers were shallow. He didn't have the facts to back up his claims. I saw the panel's reaction, polite smiles, but clearly unimpressed. I felt oddly calm. This was the same man who once dismissed my pain. Now he stood exposed, unable to fake his way through. Midway through the interview, my brother's composure cracked. One director asked a detailed question about cost-saving strategies. My brother tried to bluff. She pressed for numbers. He got flustered. His voice wavered as he rattled off vague percentages. I glanced at the faces around the table. Everyone looked skeptical. He shifted in his seat, flicked his eyes to me, and tried to crack a joke. Janine knows I'm good under pressure. I felt my stomach turn. Good under pressure? He'd been anything but during my own crisis. The final few questions were painful. He repeated the same lines, said he was a team player, but offered no real proof. By the end, he was practically stammering. When the panel thanked him for his time, he left with a forced smile. I walked him out, and he whispered, "Thanks for the easy questions," as if we'd done him a favor. I just nodded. My mind was reeling with memories of sleepless nights, postpartum pain, and that same man telling me to get over it. Here he was, undone by his own arrogance. As the door closed, I realized the job he'd boasted about was slipping right through his fingers. An hour after the interview, HR, the VPs, and I gathered for the debrief. It didn't take long. Everyone spoke the same truth. He's not qualified. One of the directors sighed. He was overconfident and unpleasant. Another frowned. He basically name-dropped you but couldn't answer basic questions. I could feel eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd respond. I inhaled, steadying my voice. If he's truly not a fit, then we owe it to ourselves and the company to move on. Relief washed over the room. They probably expected me to argue for him, but I wasn't going to throw away our team's hard work just because of blood ties. I'd learned the hard way that family doesn't always show up when you need them. I refused to sabotage my own professional credibility for someone who ignored me at my most vulnerable. We voted unanimously to reject him. As I stood to leave, a quiet sense of validation spread through me. This was closure in a way. I wouldn't sabotage him, but I wouldn't save him either. If I'd learned anything, it was that you can't rescue people who think they're above everything. Later that afternoon, HR drafted the rejection email. They forwarded me a copy to review. "We regret to inform you." I stared at the words, remembering how he'd bragged about skipping interviews, or how certain he was he'd start next Monday. I scanned the email, checking for fairness. They'd included polite phrases, thanking him for his time, acknowledging the final round. But it was clear. No position offer. No mention of me or any special circumstances. A part of me felt a pang of guilt. Even after everything, it stung to see my own brother fail. But I pushed that aside. He wasn't the supportive brother I once imagined he could be. I told HR, "This looks fine," and they hit send. Within an hour, my phone started vibrating. Call after call from my brother. I couldn't face him yet, so I let it ring. Then came texts. "What's going on? Is this a mistake? Answer me." I set my phone to silent and focused on work. I pictured him sitting by his phone, waiting for a dream job that would never come. I wasn't enjoying his misery, but I did feel a sense of triumph. I was free from their expectations. I heard about his meltdown through my cousin Anna. She was on a group call with him and Mom. Anna said he blew up, yelling that I'd set him up to fail, that it was all some twisted revenge plot. Mom apparently tried to calm him, but he shouted about how humiliated he felt. "Janine was supposed to pave the way," he cried, according to Anna. Then Mom chimed in. "Maybe it was just the wrong timing." Anna told me Mom tried to shift blame onto the company as if they'd done something wrong, but no one believed that. When Anna called me later, she was half scolding, half laughing at his tantrum. "He was furious," she said. "Said you embarrassed him in front of everyone." I felt a twinge of sadness. He was my brother, after all, but mostly, I was just done. I thanked Anna for the heads up. Then Mom tried calling me, 4 times in a row. I couldn't deal with it. I rejected every call. Eventually, I got a text. "We need to talk." I stared at it, deciding that no, we didn't. Let them stew in their anger. I owed them nothing. Months slipped by. Life went on smoothly. Work was busy, the kids grew, and I barely heard from Mom or my brother. Then came an invitation. A cousin's kid was having a birthday party at a local park, and everyone was invited. Normally I would have skipped, but Ethan convinced me, "We can't hide forever. Let's just go for the kids." So we went. My oldest ran off to play. My youngest clung to my leg, observing all the balloons and noise. I spotted my brother by the bounce house, hunched over, looking smaller. His wife was there too, avoiding eye contact with me. My mother stood at a picnic table, giving me a forced smile. The air felt thick with unspoken tension. People chatted around us, but it felt like I was in a movie scene, the background noise muted. My mom came over, arms outstretched. "How are you?" she cooed, as if we'd never fought. I nodded politely, not hugging back. She flinched but tried to keep the sweet smile. I could see my brother glancing at me, but he didn't come over. Everyone pretended nothing happened, except for those who gave me sympathetic looks. I steeled myself. I was ready for whatever came next. My mother cornered me by the snack table. She glanced over her shoulder to make sure my brother wasn't listening. Then she whispered, "It's such a shame about your brother. He really thought that job was his." Her eyes flickered with the same dismissive tone I'd heard before. The tone she used when she told me I'd figure out how to give birth alone. I felt my pulse quicken. For a moment I pictured the hospital room, the IV in my arm, and the empty space where my mother should have been. I pictured my desperate calls, my brother's mocking words. This time, I looked her in the eye. "He thought a lot of things were his, didn't he?" My voice was calm. She opened her mouth, surprised. I saw a flash of something, guilt, shame, regret. Then she just forced a smile and said, "Well, I guess these things happen." I watched her shuffle away, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I glanced at Ethan, who nodded at me from across the lawn. I felt a rush of peace. My life was whole. My kids giggled in the distance, my career was solid, and I had the family I chose. They left me alone when I needed them most. But in the end, I walked away stronger, while their illusions lay broken behind me. And for me, that was the final reckoning.